Yet is an important qualification.
Yeah, the kids are still alive. The wife is alive. We have not buried anybody yet.
All right. So I think the thing to do is first I'm going to mute everybody, and then when you want to speak, just raise your hand, and I will recognize you like an honorable member. And yeah, that's it. Who I mean, it's 43 people here today. Yesterday there were 100 people on the call, and then when I got off the call, I had must have been like 53. I counted. It was 53 DMs, messages of people who were saying I was trying to get on the call and I couldn't. I take it those of us that are here are the ones that actually bothered to do the homework.
Yes, most definitely.
Right.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
So, first of all, I'm not going to pat myself on the back for recommending this book. Like I told you guys, it's a hell of a book. It's a hell of a read. And, just rehashing those first 2 chapters again yesterday for me was just like, wow. It's one of those, as you pick it up and you read it, you remember why you like the book so much. So I think the thing to do is actually just to jump straight off into the conversation and just talk a bit about, for those of us that went through it, what you picked up and what you felt was like an important bit of insight that you got from the book. Again, just raise your hand and I'll recognize you. Unati wants to speak, so Unati, go for it.
Yeah, so I read the book, so it was really interesting for me in terms of what the engineering of creating. Basically, when you try to create a business, what is the methodology that you should follow? From the first chapter, winners and losers, the second chapter, the gramophone, and how they talk about the reason for starting a company and why certain successes have been realized. Like they spoke, I noted the lady called Elizabeth Billington, and how they compared Elizabeth Billington to Elton John, and why Elizabeth Billington was like the biggest hit in her time, and yet her highest money she's made on a show was like $10,000, which was equivalent to $690,000 in our time, and how Elton John last year made 100 million. And so that comparison, how the technology that we have now has played a role in Elton John making the money he's making now, and yet how Elizabeth Billington was praised, and how when listening to her was like listening to angels, something like that, and how even the angels were supposed to keep quiet. So basically, I learned about the engineering of creation. How when we create, we need to look at the history, and I've picked up that theme that in the books that I'm reading, that and in the concept, people look at the history, and I also pick it up when you also give your speeches and your keynotes, is that you link your presentations to history, to what has happened in the past, and using the past as a guide to us going forward, and how the past helps us. It was fascinating, even when they spoke about hunter-gatherers, and from hunter-gatherers we went to farmers, from farmers how we went to the Industrial Revolution, and how that transition, you know what I mean? It was awesome to note that how the importance of the hunters and gatherers, and what that afforded the people, and the benefits and the downfalls of that, and the farming, and how that brought a lot of the guys. They made the plow, and people wanted to know, okay, the plow in itself, it brought about other types of inventions. It was really amazing to see that.
What did you guys? Sorry, Nats, what did you guys think about this idea of the Luddite fallacy, right? Or is it the Luddite fallacy?
Luddite, it was also.
Yeah. I spent about 2 minutes saying, is it Luddite or Luddite? Luddite, and then I was like,
I debated that too.
Whatever it is. But there's a part of me that was just like, it's fascinating how, the book kind of starts off by making the point that according to the Luddite fallacy, they were weavers, right? And they kind of got caught at the intersection of the change from one economic system to another economic system. And they weren't able to jump over. And but I feel like as an African, that's exactly where we are now. Like, I feel like we're stuck in this time warp of how things used to work, and the world isn't working that way anymore. And I feel like we young people get that. Like, the young people get it, they understand it. The old people are still trying to make things work the way things always used to work. And so they're kind of keeping us, lowered, kept in the way, as it were. And maybe AGK wants to say something to this. AGK, what's up? Hey, are you there?
Hi, my name. Yes, I'm here. Do you hear me? Okay. Yes, my name is Ahang. Yes, my name is Ahang. Yes, I'm calling in from. I'm in Botswana. You're not
associated with that Ahang that didn't Aha anything, no?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yes, so I'm in Botswana, and my background is in technology. And I was reading. How do you say it? Luddite? I don't know. Right. So
I think it's Luddite. But whatever Luddite. It is, we get it. We get what it is.
Okay, so this fear is still prominent to this day. So I think while I was reading, I was saying, things are changing, but they're still remaining the same. We are going back to where we were from. As much as they were scared of losing their jobs, as much as we are scared right now of tech and the fourth industrial revolution taking away our jobs, this is the same thing. And it trickles down to the gramophone still, gramophone. Still that we are now streaming, we are now buying from MP3s to cassettes and all of that, but now we are trying to go back to concerts, we are trying to go back to the opera theaters. So we are changing, but things are still remaining the same. This is what I picked up from all of this.
What would you guys say are Africa's Luddites? Like, if there were the things that we need to be aware of, what would you say they are? Just kind of top of mind. Barco 7 seems wanted to say something. But Ahang, I'm happy that you answered this. What would you say are like Africa's Luddites? Because I've got a couple of thoughts in mind. So the first one, I think, let me let you go, and then I'll share my thoughts.
Okay. Right at the top of my head, what are we scared for currently? The fourth industrial revolution. It's a phrase that we use, but we don't understand to take it and conceptualize it and make it relevant for Africans. So right now, thinking back to tech, that's one thing we are really scared of. This automation. What is this? Even defining the fourth industrial revolution for many of us we're just fearful. I think right at the top of my mind, that's something that I'm thinking right now.
So I got to tell you guys, it's just a bit of a disclaimer. When I was studying, when I was doing my master's, I studied under a guy called Jeremy Rifkin, who in 1994 wrote a book called The End of Work. And at the time, everybody said he was crazy. He used to teach at some other university in the US. I forget the name now. I think it was University of Michigan. I might be wrong. But he wrote a book called The End of Work. And basically what he spoke about was this idea that the rate at which technology was moving meant that before the turn of the third decade into the 21st century, basically 2030, human beings would have invented technologies that can work and do the work of human beings. And at the time, everybody was like, you're crazy. You've got to think back to 1994. Like in 1994, if your dad had a cell phone, he was the man. So, and this is, do you remember those brick phones, right? Do you remember the phone was the size of your father, basically? But it was interesting that he came up with that idea. And then he wrote another book called The Third Industrial Revolution, and then wrote a follow-on book called The Zero Marginal Cost. And at a different time, I'd love for us to check out the book, The Zero Marginal Cost, because I think it's a phenomenal read. But the reason I mention this is because I think Africa's talking today about the fourth industrial revolution. I'm not even sure we understand what the third industrial revolution was. And I'm not sure we understand how to connect our societies to the third industrial revolution. And I think a lot of innovations that we think today are 4 IR innovations are actually 3 IR innovations. If you look at much of Africa, will look into just trying to get into the third industrial revolution. This conversation uses third industrial revolution infrastructure. This is not fourth industrial revolution infrastructure by any stretch of the imagination. A lot of the remote work type of technologies that we use are 3IR infrastructure, not 2IR or 4IR infrastructure. And so if I was having a meeting, I've had several meetings over the past 2 days with my team, executive team, et cetera, but what's been interesting is to watch the speed at which we're connected, the lack of availability of internet, and then to go, if this is where we are and how poor our ICT infrastructure is and connectivity is, and we're trying to leverage 3IR technologies, can you imagine what's going to happen when we try to use 4IR technologies? Like it's an absolute mess. And the reason I ask this is because I wonder if, you know, I asked, what do you guys think of Africa's Luddites? But I wonder if we as consumers are part of the problem rather than being part of the solution. I wonder if we're so stuck in how things work that we're not being forceful enough and pushing hard enough that the people in power should be making bigger changes. I mean, it's interesting. And I think until we answer that question, we're going to, the reason I ask this question is because I think absent of that question being answered, you're always going to have, you're led by the best among you sometimes. But actually most often, the people who end up leading you are those who are most average, that are just willing to step up to the plate of being unpopular, because leadership is not about your ability to lead. Leadership is about your ability to stomach being unpopular. That's what leadership is about. And so if you want to be liked, you don't want to be a leader. And so the reason you end up with leaders who are not particularly good is because they are the ones who don't care if people like them or not. They're willing to take the risk. And I suppose what I'm saying is, are we willing to push our leaders hard enough to make sure that we get the best quality of leaders? Or are we just going to settle with the type of people that are out there? Well, Nat, you want to say something?
Yeah, look, what I wanted to say on the Luddites of our time again is if you remember, there's also the fact that in our country, one of our challenges is the fact that we have capitalism, yes, but it's more about who you know and less about what you can give and what performance levels you have. You know, it's not about merit. You know, even though we embrace the capitalism concept, but we don't embrace, you know, what you can. It's based on what you can do and more about who you know, because you get a lot of people. They're very poor in terms of performance, but yet they achieve success. And then you get a person they don't know a lot of people, but they're very talented and they've got the work ethic, and yet you can match that work ethic and talent with the success. So I think one of our Luddites in our country is that we need to, like in America, you can know very little people, but if you've got performance, or let me not say America per se, but in other economies, it's more about what you can put to the table. And that's what capitalism is about. So I think we need, as a country, we need to move past that to get to a point where it's about what you can bring to the table, not about who you know. So I think that's one of the challenges that we need to overcome as a country. It needs to be more about what you can do and not about who you know a lot.
I agree. You know, I think I did a video actually, and Notanda wants to say something. Notanda, I'll take you in a minute, but I did a video some time ago talking about, you know, kind of the economic systems I think that hold the continent back, and the video went viral. And I know a video goes viral when, you know, this is how you know your video's gone viral. When someone sends you a video of you and they don't know it's you. So they send it to you on WhatsApp and they're like, yo, check this guy out. Oh my God. And I open the video, I'm like, but this is me, shit. You know, but this conversation about the quality of leaders that we get, and I spoke at the University of Namibia some years ago. I was part of the TEDx talk there, and I spoke about how you can see one of the ways to see if a society rewards merit is to see who a society gives wealth to, and wealth is not an indicator of merit, guys, not by any stretch of the imagination. Let me put it to you in a different way. There are a lot of very dumb rich people, a lot of very dumb rich people. And then there are a lot of very clever poor people, a lot of very clever poor people. I imagine almost all of us come from a family where you had that one uncle who knew things like, you know, we all have that one uncle who's a drunkard, but he knows things and he can spit any English word, and oh, shut up, English, this guy, you will not know what he's talking about. And he's right, he knows his stuff, you know, but, you know, he's not particularly well off. So I think wealth is not a great indicator of of intelligence, right? That notwithstanding, I'm doing this talk at University of Namibia, and I was talking a bit about this concept. And one of the things I said was, if you looked at the time, she was Africa's richest woman. And she's the former president of Angola's daughter. She's not his former daughter, he's the former president, just for clarity. And I made the comment about how I wonder if she would have been able to amass that level of wealth if she was not related to the former president, but rather was just a ordinary citizen like the rest of us. And I think that's a big part of what Africa has to get past, this idea of creating an economic system that rewards talent, merit, and ability, rather than an economic system that rewards networks, connections, and contacts. Now, Lutando, you wanted to say something.
Hi, Vusi. I wanted to ask, especially on the last point that you just touched on, what you bring to the table, does it have to be tangible or intangible? For example, I could say for myself, if we were to start a business, I know that what I bring to the table is probably the circle of the networks that I have and my ability to communicate and convey a message. And also another thing I could say, I have a lot of intangible things to bring to the table. And yes, I do know how to like bring some of the tangible stuff to the table, but I'm more stronger on the intangible. So how do you know? Yeah, I guess my question is, how do you know when you're bringing something that's actually needed to the table, if that makes sense?
No, I mean, I don't know that the question should be, how do you know if you're bringing something to the table? I think the question should be, how do you value what you're bringing to the table? Because everybody brings something to the table, right? Even your ability to form a decent sentence is bringing something to the table. The ability to write, a decent copywriter today is worth a lot of money. So that's bringing something to the table. Having networks brings something to the table. Having the level of intellect brings something to the table. So I think maybe what you should concern yourself with is not whether or not you know what you're bringing to the table, but how do you value it and get other people to value it too. And then just a final note on this, I think if you don't know how to value the value that you're bringing to the table, you definitely won't be able to convince other people what that value is. Definitely.
That's
I
true.
can tell you that for free. When I got into private equity, I'm trying to think back. I got into private equity probably about 10, 11 years ago. And I was very quiet about it, because I am with most things. People kind of know me as the speaker, and I like that because that's a part of what I do. It's on everything that I do. But when I got into private equity all those years ago, I didn't have money that many people do in private equity. I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew what I had. I had a strong network. I had a strong brand. I had a reputation. And I had a track record. And I knew how to leverage it. I think if you can convince people that, if you can convince people what you're worth, then that's it. That's all you really got to worry about. Everything else just kind of picks up along the way. We've got somebody called Huawei P20 Lite, which is a very loyal name to Huawei, but let's hear from you.
Hi, Vusi. My name is Daulani. Sorry, I missed the first part. Thank you. So, by the way, my name means plow. So when I read the book and the first part was actually talking about plowing, I'm like, this is meant to be, hey? Yeah, sorry I missed the first part of the meeting because I had connection problems. But I just wanted to jump in on the point where you're saying not every rich person is intelligent. If you read Outliers, that explains it very, very clearly. Where Malcolm actually emphasizes that it's all about opportunity. So people who are successful were actually in the right place at the right time. So merit counts, but it really does not take you where you would really like to go. It's better if you have the networks and the right people to help you get where you want to be.
So one of the things that jumped out at me about the book, certainly the first two chapters as I was reading them, was that I wonder if you notice how technology is a gift and a curse at the same time, right? So, Unati, you made the point about Elton John being compared with, her name escapes me now, but if you think about the comparison between those two people, the real reason Elton, and I don't want to be simplistic about this, but I think a big part of the reason why Nelson became so successful was precisely because, or rather Elton became so successful was precisely because he lived in a world that was more connected than the world that the person he's been compared to lived in. And so those levels of connections tend to amplify economic opportunity. And I'll say that again, levels of connections tend to amplify economic opportunity. So we're having this conversation today, we're all in different places. Could you imagine if this conversation was about selling something and all of us were selling that thing or buying it? That amplifies economic opportunity, right? And I think one of the opportunities we have today, and it's something we must never take for granted. I spend a lot of time with entrepreneurs in our firm, as well as entrepreneurs in our ecosystem, helping them with this, which is the idea that you have to recognize that you don't have to sell to the person you've got a meeting with at 1 o'clock. Like you have to start thinking about the digital and the World Wide Web as a marketplace, and not just as a place you go to Google to ask questions that you don't have answers to. But I think that mindset shift, and that's one of those Luddites, I think that's holding us back. That mindset shift is going to require a lot of work for us to do to get us to recognize that there's huge opportunity on the other side of what we see today as just a connected opportunity. Unati, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yes, what I wanted to say was I forgot the lady's name. She's I don't want to call her Huawei. So what's your name? What's your name again?
Taulani.
So Taulani.
Yes, I'll update my profile. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Taulani. So what I wanted to say is, if you look at based on what you were saying now, Vusi, on I think it's chapter 1 or chapter 2, where they were talking about soccer leagues and how, depending on, because the one soccer league has got so much, is exposed to so much networks, that's what determines the value of pay. And then you get the second league, which is not exposed to so much television networks, which it also determines pay, which is the same as basically what we're saying now is who you are exposed to, and if, for example, if what we are discussing now, and all of us were selling or buying something, that would create value, whereas somebody who's selling to on the street would not have the same opportunity. So basically, it's true that opportunity and exposure, it determines how the success that's gonna come. And with that said, though, I believe I think we need to be. I need to be careful, because I read a lot of books as well, and a lot of these books, they give one perception. For example, the book about outliers, which I also read, about how opportunity and all those things, it determines success and all those things to a certain degree, yes. Because there's also a book by I think it's Simon Sinek, or I think where they speak about. I think the book I'm reading now is Grid by another lady, I forgot her name, where they are speaking about how perseverance and hard work, eats talent, a lot of the times. So it's also very important that we understand that, a lot of these books, as we read them, we need to look at them as a single view, as a single opinion, and then look at each book that we read as a single opinion, and not necessarily use that one opinion as like the flavor of the entire success journey and so on. And just before I mute myself, there is one. If I read this book, there's basically it's climating. It goes. Basically, we need to, as we develop, it goes from farmers and gatherers, it goes to farmers, from farmers to industrial. So as it goes, it's basically painting a picture. We also need to do the same thing in terms of our entrepreneurial journeys. Sometimes we've got this one idea, and we may not necessarily want to change. But if you look at your idea, it may not necessarily be supported by the technology to get you the exponential success that you may need, or the launch that you need. So we need to be mindful of that as we are on our journeys. We need to look at, is my idea in line with the time that I'm in? I think this morning I also finished The Purple Cow by Seth Godin, where he speaks about being remarkable. And that in itself, you need to look at your idea. Is your idea fit, or you might need to morph your idea? You might need to morph your entrepreneurial journey to fit with the technology of the time, or you may, no matter how well intentioned you are, if you want to start a cassette business, you might really have to think very hard about how you're going to be successful with that, because we are way ahead. We are on MP3. So basically we have to be, I think they spoke about, was it, what's this guy now from Apple, who had to change his business idea. At one stage, they said they'll never share Apple's data to government, but now they are sharing it and so on. So we have to be willing to change. We have to be willing to look at views, and not as doctrine at times, but as opinions. Even though you may have looked at it as doctrine, but you have to learn to change and be like, okay, yeah, even though I may have looked at this as doctrine, but now I looked at it as an opinion, and I'm going to change and so on. Yeah, thanks, man.
So I've just asked the question on the group now, because I think for me, when I was reading about the financial success of Elton John, then I read about, if you get to the part where it talks about the gramophone, you talk about right at the very beginning when it talks about the different production systems from, sort of the very nascent economic model, right all the way through to the industrialized economic model. And now I spoke a bit about technology and how technology has lowered barriers for us to connect. I think at the end of the day, what you really are trying to do, particularly for entrepreneurs in this call, is, it just dawned on me, like, as I was reading this, I was like, actually, this is the whole quest is mass. That's it. Your conquest is all mass. You want mass production, mass distribution, and mass consumption. That's it. That's really where wealth is sitting. Whatever the product, if I make these cups, I bought these at a shop close by here called The Pantry, great cups. But if I make these cups and, I make them some sort of artisanal product, then I've got to have a margin-rich business. But if I want to build real wealth over a question of time, then what I'm after is mass. Zoli, you want to say something to us? Hi, Zoli, over to you.
Hi everyone. So what I'm picking up from this conversation is that timing is really important. And timing is not one thing that you can control. So Elton John made more money as compared to Elizabeth, only because of the technology. So he had no control of the technology. Also, going back to Malcolm Gladwell, someone brought up outliers. So I think in the first few chapters, he talks about when you were born, and talks about at least being born at a specific time and how they made it because they were born at that particular era or time. So how do you control timing? And also you spoke about mass production. So regardless of mass production, Elizabeth did not make as much money as Elton John. Elton John could make more money because of technology and mass production. Because of technology, he could do well with mass production. I don't know how do you control time? How do you control such things?
Yeah, that you can't. I think that's I'll tell you what that is. That's like, that's like the guy who's born into an incredibly wealthy family, goes to a really good school, and then after that himself takes that family's wealth and multiplies it by 10. Right. Some people just have the genetic lotto. It's I was watching a documentary the other day about Usain Bolt, and they were talking about, so the whole thing is about how fast Usain Bolt is, and whilst he's incredibly fast, there's also a lot of technological advantages that he enjoys. So for instance, I think it was Jesse James, but when Jesse James was running, they were running on gravel. Now they run on the tarmac. The type of shoes that the athletes wear now are different types of shoes.
Yes.
Even the clothing is made so that the athlete becomes more aerodynamic. So if you ask the question like, would Jesse James beat Usain Bolt? Well, you can't answer that question. It's what Rocky Marciano beat, Mike Tyson. You just cannot answer that question because they're completely different athletes from a completely different time. But I think for me, the question is not, I hear the question about how do you ask the question of time? I think the question is actually this, Vanazoli, and if you'll allow me. You and I recognize that this time, this moment right now, is the best time human beings have ever had to live, because we have access right now to the best technologies, certainly in the known modern times. Yeah, there's a lot of conspiracy theorists out there who talk about how the world was a certain way and then the world caved in and Atlantis is under the sea. We don't know, okay? This is not an Aquaman movie. We don't know. But what we know is about over the past couple of tens of thousands of years, technologically human beings today are more advanced than they've ever been. We know that to be true. But we also know that this is the worst technology human beings will have if you take today as the point to look forward, not as the point to look down.
Yes.
So the question about time is like, well, is this the best time? It's the best time based on the past. It's the worst time based on the future, right? Like there'll be more in future. But what you're going to do is you're going to maximize this moment, this time right now. Doris, my friend, wants to say something, so I'm going to keep quiet and let you speak, Doris.
Hi, everyone. I actually have a question with having a great idea at the wrong time in terms of the economy and people being ready for the idea. For example, let's say you want to start a community Wi-Fi, a prepaid community Wi-Fi service. And we all know maybe most people in that area, they don't have like credit cards to pay in terms of subscribing to the service. What do you do in this instance? Do you hold back the idea lest someone else starts and runs with it, or you just start right away regardless of what's happening?
I don't know. I think it depends. I think it depends, man. I'm of the view that if any business that adds value has the right to make a profit. That's my view, okay. Right? Okay. I do think there is a difference between a profit and profiteering. So I just want to clarify that. But I think every business has the right to make a profit. So if you're in an environment where people can't pay for the product, maybe it's possible that you're selling the wrong product, or it's possible that you're selling it to the wrong people. And you know, sometimes I think it's important that we offer solutions that people need, not solutions that we think people need, especially if you don't have a runway to support your hypothesis. So, you know, if you're selling Wi-Fi into an environment where people barely have running water, I have news for you, my friend, you're selling the wrong product, right? Like, you got to sell the water first. That's what you got to do. And that's a lot about operating for the environment that you are in, right? Coincidentally, the first two chapters in this book touch a lot about that, how the environment that you are in is a big part of a competitive advantage. So you've got to operate for the environment that you're in. If you fight environment, you will always lose. That's why Steve Jobs was a genius, because he was one of the very few people who fought the environment and won in his lifetime. Most people fight the environment and they lose. So if you fight your environment, you will always lose. It's not a great fight to start. You know, so if I was you, I would think about that, because I think it's important that you just make sure that what you're trying to sell and who you're trying to sell it fits what those people need, not necessarily what you think they need.
Okay, makes sense. Okay.
All right. Cool, man. So it seems like that's it. That's everybody's comments. So yeah, I take it everybody enjoyed the first two chapters of the book. Let's see. Let's give ourselves some homework for tomorrow. So let's do chapter 3 and 4. Chapter 3 is about the barbed wire. Chapter 4 is about seller feedback. So I think let's do those for tomorrow. And in fact, I'll tell you what we do, guys. Let's do chapter 3, 4, and 5, because 5 is Google search, and Google search is a really, really great chapter. And that's about 18 pages. It's actually not a lot. It's just 18 pages. So you can read that with a single cup of coffee if you make the coffee really, really hot and you sip slow. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks
And just one thing, man. On one thing that I also wanted to say before I also mute myself here is that one of the what does it say here? There was one guy on the I think it's chapter 2 on the gramophone that the guy lost his voice because he had to record like 50 times his song so that he can be able to duplicate it. So and then like think like few seasons later, like the recording mechanism was invented. So just to answer the gentleman that just spoke, sometimes I think in Seth Godin's book Way in Purple Cow, sometimes you have to go to the customers and ask them what do they want, and then go in and then create it and sell that to them. Sometimes it's not about, we don't have to start a business where you come up with an idea. Sometimes there's nothing wrong in going to do a survey or research in what is needed by the customers and then start a business model based on that. You know, I haven't started a company of my own myself, but I believe, you know, you don't have to really start your own company based on what you think the market needs. You have to sometimes go to the customers, just do a general survey and then find out what people need, and then start a business based on that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're all right. Okay, cool. Does anybody else wanted to say anything else?
No, we're good, man. Thank you very much, guys.
Okay.
All right, thanks everybody for your time. I appreciate your time. Let's do this again tomorrow.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Send me an email.
Bye.
Enjoy.
Bye.
Guys. Goodbye.
Oh man.
I'll update my profile, guys.
I love you.
Bye.
Thanks so much.
Cheers.